Hello and welcome to Serious Coin. I'm Kelly Willis Green, and this is the podcast where we have rich conversations about wealth. In this final episode of season 2, I wanted to leave you with something truly sumptuous. We're talking the ultimate in luxury travel with Cari Gray, founder of Gray & Co. They design totally exclusive, uniquely custom, active vacations for the private jet set. This is the kind of travel where the only limitation is imagination. And Gray & Co. appears to have even that covered. In this episode, Cari and I take you around the world to the hottest emerging destinations, the newest and best hotel openings, and the blow-your-mind bucket list experiences that Gray & Co. creates for their clients. These are tech billionaires, celebrities, U.S. ambassadors, names you'd know if she'd share them, but Cari is dutifully discreet in not mentioning anybody without their permission. She also provides a glimpse into what it's like to manage the complexities of these anything's possible trips. Things like negotiating the landing of a private helicopter in a farmer's field, or arranging pizza for lunch every day in rural Japan, or once insisting on a quick shuffle of hotel rooms for a very private client when Paris Hilton and her entourage landed in the suite next door. Cari is an absolute delight, and she has an interesting founder story of her own as well. She tells me that as a child, she was her parents' excess baggage on their overseas work assignments, and then through that became an insatiable explorer in her own right. She then graduated from law school, but then quickly realized that her true passion was travel. So she switched careers to work full-time for travel specialist Butterfield and Robinson. But in 2009, in the middle of the Great Recession, Cari made the gutsy move to take luxury travel to the next level and founded Gray & Co. In our conversation, she talks about why she credits U.S. businessman Herbert Allen as an early mentor and what it was like to have news anchor Tom Brokaw along on her first trip at Gray & Co. I know you'll enjoy this episode and you'll want to get out your passport after listening, I'm sure. Enjoy.
I think that people very much hit a fork in the road by virtue of COVID and imagining where they wanted to go when they could get out of lockdown. I think some people were desperate to get back to the familiar, whether it was Tuscany or the Amalfi or the Paris, and to visit the friends and family that those connections that they've had over the years, whether it's a hotelier or a guide or a bike ride or a hike that they've just been dreaming about doing again. And then there were other people who thought, wow, I've got such an incredible lexicon of experiences behind me. Now I'm really ready to take the plunge and go somewhere more exotic, farther flung, and bring it on.
Well, whether it's the familiar or the exotic, I think we are all ready and excited to travel. And you are known as the woman who always knows where to go next. So, Cari, I just want to then start by maybe spinning the globe with you a little bit, and let's talk about some of those where next destinations. What are some of the places that you're taking your clients now that everybody else will be talking about 5 years from now?
There are some really incredible places of the world that are opening up and opening up to new forms of travel. Our clientele, it needs to stay somewhere really comfortable. So we're dependent on having an incredible lodge or a castle or a private estate or a villa or a yacht or somewhere to facilitate that destination. And there's some very interesting trends in Scandinavia right now. The Arctic Circle, the Faroe Islands. There's a F1 driver that's opened a hotel, Mika Hakkinen, up in Finland, and his hotel is full all winter with people that are coming up and learning how to drive on ice roads. Just a lot of interesting things happening in Scandinavia. And then in other parts of the world, we just had one of our team members was just in Siem Reap in Cambodia and Laos. Those places are back better than ever. I'm just personally back from Morocco, and people have been working so hard throughout the pandemic. So there's all kinds of new experiences, new hotels, new restaurants around the world that have had a good chance to regroup and improve themselves over the last 2.5 years.
Tell me about what's going on in Morocco. Actually, I just have some friends that just came back and were raving about it, the whole experience.
Well, in Marrakesh, there is the King's Hotel, which is called the Royal Mansour, which is an incredible destination. It's a number of, I think they have 50 or so individual riads, which is the traditional Moroccan architecture. And people really enjoy that experience. It's built as a museum employing thousands of craftsmen. It's out of this world. And when they're in Marrakesh, we've managed to do some really exclusive experiences, such as visiting Villa Oasis, which is the home of Yves Saint Laurent, where he lived in Marrakesh, and he has his Jardin Majorel. These beautiful gardens are attached to it, but the Villa Oasis is really, really special. It's now being limited to only 5 people at a time, and it's the hottest ticket to get in town. So we've got some guests that are going there, and they've also we've got them into the Serge Lutens, who's a famous French perfume fellow who has taken over 65 houses within the Medina of Marrakesh and has transformed them into this otherworldly kind of masterpiece that our travelers will be taking motorcycles with sidecars through they're not driving them, they're obviously in the sidecars, but going through the Medina and arriving and visiting this incredible foundation, this Serge Lutens experience. So that's kind of fun.
Sounds so awesome. And those are the experiences that I think partly what make people want to work with a company like yours, because you can have lots of money, but when travel isn't your business, you don't have the kinds of networks and people on the ground that you do. You just can't arrange that kind of stuff for yourself.
Well, you wouldn't even know it exists, Kelly. I mean, like something like that, who in their right mind would buy 65 riads in the middle of Marrakesh and interconnect them? It's just, it's really, really outrageous. And now that the pandemic is in the state that it's in, the demand for travel is so high, the prices are so high, and the service levels are so low that it is a real opportunity for savvy people. I think that's along the lines of what you were referring to enlist the likes of companies like Gray & Co. to help them navigate these waters.
Is there one emerging destination that you would only tell your best friend about? And of course, all the listeners to this podcast, but what would that be?
Oh, that's really hard. I think people are very obsessed with islands. We are huge fans of Mallorca. Ibiza has had a renaissance.
I was in Ibiza in the spring. It's beautiful. And the
and
food scene is amazing.
Oh, it's so hard to pick one place, but certainly remote Indonesia is on the top of a lot of cognoscentes list at the moment. There's a place called Raja Ampat, which is an archipelago of islands that are accessible by private boat, and the clarity of the water, the snorkeling, the diving, the interactions with the locals. It's a very unique offering out there right now. But I also think too that the Arctic Circle, and a lot of people are going for the seventh continent as well. So Antarctica is also a really exciting, or I guess the sixth continent. The sixth continent of Antarctica is now much more accessible than it's ever been. And you can actually go and sleep on the ice with a company down there called White Desert, which is doing really interesting things, or even just make it as a day trip from Cape Town. So the bucket list is getting more interesting and more accessible.
Sleeping on the ice. And here I am still trying to master cold water swimming.
Yeah.
But tell me, are there any destinations that, where what was old is new again? Like if I think of travel like fashion, what's waxing, what's waning, what's in, what's out? Has anything come roaring back to life that used to be maybe tired?
I think the world is roaring back to life right now. And I think that's really exciting. And tourism is such a huge part of so many countries' economic makeup that if we can go travel, we should go travel to support all the people that rely upon tourism. And so I think everything is new again. It's been 2.5 years. The pause button has been on. Right now, Rome is busting at the seams.
That's what I've heard. Europe is full.
It's full. There are places that have really suffered because of the pandemic. And so what a gift it is to come back. People are so welcoming. The travel that I've done during the pandemic and well, we're still during the pandemic, has been extra rewarding because people realize that you are going out of your way, whether it's driving to national parks in the United States or going to places within Canada. I'd never been to Killarney Mountain Lodge before. It was phenomenal. Fogo Island is amazing. There's just so many great places to go to, and everything is new. But having said that, there are places like Patagonia. A lot of people don't realize that Patagonia consists of both Chile and Argentina. Mm-hmm. It's a great time seasonally to head south to South America. It's springtime over there, so it's a wonderful time for the snowbirds to head south.
Yeah.
There are countries like Uruguay, which have an incredible little pocket of luxury in Jose Ignacio. Colombia is on an upswing. Mm-hmm. They've got these incredible island hotels now off the coast of Cartagena. So you get that great colonial city along with the beach experience. And then if you bring your bicycle along, you can go biking around Armenia, which is where all the coffee culture in Colombia comes from. Australia has really hidden gems that are now coming to the forefront, like the new Bailey Lodges up in the Daintree Wilderness, which is opening up Silky Oaks Lodge.
And what's that? Where's that? And what's the experience like there?
It's in northern Australia in an incredibly unique ecosystem. It's a lodge that's been around for a long time, but has now been acquired and has had a whole lot of money put into the actual hotel itself, but also has very tastefully and in a very eco-conscious way opened up the eyes to the world of this really special place that needs both preservation and awareness.
You mentioned hotels, and I love a good hotel. In fact, we have planned trips to places just because there's a great hotel, places that weren't even really at the top of our list, and we've usually had great experiences. So what are some of the new, really high-end luxury hotels that are exciting to you these days?
There's a new property in Provence called Villa Lacoste, which is just a handful of years old. It's owned by Irish people that have an extensive art collection. And we had one of our team there last week, and she was just blown away by the service levels, the beauty, and the above and beyond. We had another one of our team members in Cambodia going to Bill Bensley's Shintamani, which is also in a really fragile ecosystem. And she was blown away with that experience. And he has just opened a property, Bill Bensley, in Nepal. Nepal has never had a luxury property, and now Shintamani will bring that level of five-star experience to a country that's been very intimidating for people to access, but it now paves the way for a really exclusive experience there. Another place on our radar, and now there's direct flights to the Azores in Portugal. There's a company called Singular, which has crafted some exquisite properties among the islands. And in Finland, there's an exquisite lodge called Oktalo, which is in above the Arctic Circle. Lots of really fabulous new openings have come on the radar within the last even 12 months.
Now, Greenco has won all kinds of awards for your work. You're among Robb Report's top 10 travel specialists. You've been named best tour operator in the world by Travel and Leisure magazine, which I guess, as you say, is a bit of a misnomer because you don't actually run tours. All of your travel is custom, bespoke, and really the ultimate in luxury. But for anyone who's listening and they're thinking, well, I'm traveling first class, I stay in 5-star hotels, I book all the best restaurants, I have a trip planner. What's this like next level up? What does it really look like? Like, paint me a picture.
So at Gray & Co, we really sweat the details, and we crave seamless experiences from the start to the finish of the trip and the beginning and the end of every day for all ages and abilities. And what we do is we take a lot of the guesswork out of people's vacations. We still make sure there's lots of choice and flexibility, but at the end of the day, we want things to be super smooth. And we also want to facilitate spontaneity because if the weather is bad, we want to be able to pivot. We want to be able to read people's moods. So it's the kind of the ultimate bespoke uh, creation that's also very much there's a team working in the present and there's also a team working on the future, which could be tomorrow or it could be this afternoon or it could be the next place the private jet is landing at.
Do your clients mostly travel by private jet?
Most of our clients travel by private jet. They don't necessarily own the jets,
Sure.
all of them, but they do prefer private. It is funny though, a lot of them will still prefer commercial when they're doing a long haul flight,
Hmm.
across the Atlantic to Europe or to Australia. The
Right.
commercial flights are give people a bit more room to move around.
So you mentioned private jets, and it reminds me of something that I read. I know you've there's been a lot of media exposure for Gray and Co. And there was something that I read in the Globe and Mail, which for non-Canadian listeners is Canada's national newspaper. And so, Kara, I want to read you something from it and then kind of get your take. And it says, planning these trips means using a client's own jet to hopscotch around a continent or having a private helicopter on standby just in case. It means hiring Hollywood directors to pilot drones for cinematic vacation videos or finding an overseas out of print book to plan someone's family history tour. Is, is that what you do? Is that accurate?
Well, yes. And what's really fun is working together with clients to figure out what they want and also helping them anticipate wants that they don't even know that they have.
For instance?
So sometimes, if you're looking into, ancestry and you want to go to Scotland, maybe you don't realize that your relative has a castle up in Inverness and that actual castle's something that could be rented or a place for a dinner or a falconry experience or meeting somebody somewhere that's an ancient or distant relative. So anything is kind of possible and fun.
What's the most outlandish request you've had from a client?
Often what's most outlandish is sometimes the most complicated, and again we love complicated. So we had a client, speaking of Scotland, who asked us to first come up with all the best things there are to do around Scotland, and then she used that as a means to help plan the trip for her family. And one of those experiences was going out to see where Mendelssohn composed uh, a symphony. It involved a cave called Fingal's Cave on the island of Staffa, which has, according to Mendelssohn, perfect acoustics. So what we did was we arranged a helicopter to land in a farmer's field and got into a rib boat and went out to this island. And what we did as well was we hired a singer so that she could go into the cave and actually show off the acoustics.
Mm.
The client didn't realize that we'd gone to that extra step, but it was a really magical moment when all the pieces came together and we improved upon what was already a pretty epic experience.
Can you think of a time where you felt in the moment like you really pulled a rabbit out of a hat for a client and did something truly unexpected?
We were at Angkor Wat having biked around the temples, gleefully passing the tour buses and zipping along, headed back to our hotel for lunch. And one of the travelers noticed a big poster of a rat. And it turns out that the rat project in Cambodia consists of these Tanzanian rats that are imported and can sniff out TNT.
Mm.
And so she had a real interest in these rats, had heard about them. And so while they were having lunch, we zipped back and got to know the rat people really well and managed to convince them to open up a demonstration where the rats sniffed along, found the embedded TNT, and got a peanut for it. And we were lucky enough to go so far as to allow the traveler to cuddle the rat before she left. And it was a huge experience for her and a really amazing part of the mind clearing component of Cambodia today after the horrific years that they had been through. That was fun.
Yeah, and I mean, but that, as you say, that would be unexpected. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have like rat cuddling on your list of travel criteria when you're given a travel brief. Tell me about your clientele.
Our clientele are really curious people. They've been typically to a lot of the more sort of well trodden, known destinations. They uh, love to have their expectations managed. They despise surprises, and they work very much from word of mouth. So for us, that's been our sort of key marketing strategy. They tend to have a lot of energy. They take really good care of themselves. They're very intelligent. They want to give back. They want to learn, but they have there's no margin of error. So they expect a lot. They're willing to pay, but they're also willing to expect a lot. And the pressure on us to deliver is really high. But again, managing expectations is a huge piece of the puzzle for both sides. And oftentimes, what is most important is not something that can be bought. It's a relationship, or it's an experience, or it's a timing, it's a connection, it's a thinking for them kind of moment.
And I know your clientele from time to time has included celebrities and other public figures, which I would think would add another level of complexity to all the planning that you do. I mean, are you dealing with the security detail for those people? Are you trying to keep paparazzi at bay? I mean, what is it like when you're dealing with that cohort?
Most of our clients are very discreet and private, and that's one of the reasons why they're attracted to Gray and Co, because we are very much under the radar and we respect those values immensely. But yes, we've had some incredibly high profile people with extensive security details. The fun thing about that is that we get to go and do the trip very quickly with all the security so that there's no surprises for them, which is the fun side of the equation.
So is that you're doing the trips twice? Once in advance with security and once with the client?
That's a good question. We would actually do it 3 times. So we would make sure everything worked from our end, then we would do it with the detail, and then we would execute it for the trip. Sounds excessive, but it's necessary because a lot of those travelers are moving very quickly, especially when you have private jets. A lot can be fit into a day. And with us, every day, every hour, every experience has to be seamless. We've also had some fun cultural clients. We had someone who was described as a European. He ended up being a Russian oligarch that arrived at 5 in the morning, and we had no idea who that person was until his 767 landed in a small airport in California. And it was a lot of fun. It was a fun challenge, and it was exciting, and yet at the same day, everybody sort of looks the same in spandex with a bike helmet on.
Gray & Co specializes in active vacations. All of these trips involve a component of hiking, biking, paddling, snorkeling, or diving, and usually a combination. And while spandex and a bike helmet may be the great equalizers, these clients expect their trips to be seamless, with no margin for error and often moving very, very quickly. Cari told me about one trip that included a stop in Egypt for the day. So I couldn't help but wonder how clients react when maybe things don't go as planned.
Well, there's always the weather component.
Yeah.
And I had a really lovely woman who, when I informed her that the estancia in Patagonia wasn't going to serve lunch at 1 o'clock, it was going to be at 3 o'clock, and it wasn't going to be light salads that they preferred. It was going to be a heavy steak. And she turned to me very kindly and said, "Let me guess, you can control the weather too, right, Cari?" So sometimes we can only go so far to infiltrate our influence on the culture. But turns out they ended up loving their 3 o'clock lunches. But yes, things do go wrong. They don't go according to plan, and I think that we had a case in New Zealand, where the South Island was about to get pummeled with horrible weather, and this client wanted to take a helicopter up to the North Island so that they could fly really low. So we had to warn them ahead of time and move them a whole day early from the South Island up to the North Island. So we had to have everything ready and space available and all the pieces of the puzzle able to fall into plan. And it worked out great. They avoided the storm. They stopped on a glacier, which they needed to have a little break from the helicopter, and they stopped in the park and went rafting, and then finally arrived at the south tip of the North Island, where they had beautiful weather until they left. And don't kid yourself. Look, there's a lot of things that are out of our control. When there's no place to have a helicopter land, we need to find the right farmer to scare his sheep and make sure that we have the right kind of whiskey to deliver to the farmer to thank him for that. And no matter how hard we try and how much work we do in advance, we had one instance where a hotel put our traveler in the room beside Paris Hilton and her entourage. And what is another difference with Gray & Co is not how much planning can happen in advance, but what happens then when something like that happens? What do we do? And of course, we ended up moving this client to the most exquisite suite within the castle. So it's part of the fun and part of the challenge, and it's never a dull moment.
No doubt. And then I guess there's the odd tourist who would be really wanting to have a room next to Paris Hilton and her entourage, but I would suspect not your clientele.
Oh my God, it was a mother-daughter, like sweet Sound of Music kind of experience that ended up in the middle of an EDM music festival, and helicopters were taking DJs. Yeah, it was lots of excitement.
I think it's being open to serendipity sometimes is the best part of travel. And I don't know, speaking for myself, and I don't think my husband would agree, but some of our best adventures have been when things didn't go as planned, didn't go well. And you come home with a great story that maybe doesn't feel so great in the moment, but later you're laughing about it. And it's something you remember the rest of your life.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that that's what we aspire to do too, is not to completely sanitize the trip and make it formulaic, or we always allow plenty of choice and flexibility in everything that we do. We have more vehicles than we need, because if anyone wants to go back to the boutique to pick something up, or if somebody wants to stay longer for sunset, or if somebody wants to go to bed early, or if somebody needs to go and have a massage and everybody else is busy with the penguins, that kind of stuff is super important to us. And we encourage people to put their own stamp on every day, and we just work around it. We love getting to know our clients. We never think that they're only going to travel with us once. We hope that they travel with us again, and we invest a lot in knowing that they love pasta with tomato sauce every day, no matter what country they're in.
That does make me think of the fact that you're dealing with these ultra rich, and you are their trusted trip planner. As you say, you're getting to know their preferences, like having pasta with tomato sauce every day. And I mean, when you travel with people, that's one of the best ways to get to know them, right? You're meeting their families. And I would think that you have to have a certain gravitas and a way of being in the world to deal with these people and earn their respect. And I'm just curious, did you grow up around money? How did you come to feel comfortable in this world?
I'm from Winnipeg, and I'm the youngest of 6, so I had plenty of older siblings. I had parents that loved to travel and took me along with them, which was wonderful. And I spent 14 terrific years at Butterfield and Robinson, where I was able to nurture within Butterfield and Robinson this elite group of travelers that came to Butterfield wanting a private jet experience. They didn't want 2 guides for 24 travelers back then. They wanted, one guide for every 2 travelers. They didn't want 1 van. They wanted 6 vans. And I was sort of a cultural ambassador within Butterfield, and was very privileged to learn about this subset of the world. I was able to meet Herbert Allen, who's a investment banker, well known, and he traveled with an incredible group of friends. And so over the years, they trained me. I didn't come into this. I as I was told many times, you just don't listen. And over the years, I've been forced to learn how to listen, and it's been an incredible privilege. And all the lessons that I've learned for them have I've been able to carry over to teaching the rest of our team, to sharing with suppliers and hoteliers around the world, because what we really have to do everywhere we go is to set everybody up to win at all times. You can't create seamless experiences without having that deep-seated passion to set others up to win and be really, really collaborative. No one person can ever think of every variable of every day, especially when you're working in places like Japan, where I'm orchestrating a bike trip in Japan with 4 private jets and a culture that is very, very foreign. Was an epic challenge, to say nothing of having to produce pizza for lunch. But it was so exciting and so much fun.
You didn't pursue a career in travel right off the bat, though, did you? You went to law school.
I did. I got called to the bar, which Canadians do. It's actually requires more studying than the word leads on. But there was plenty of going to that bar as well. I started guiding for Butterfield while I was in law school. I did a high school program with them in grade 11 and was obsessed with the idea of biking trips. So I guided for 2 seasons early in the early 90s. And in 94, I decided to work a little bit longer with the bike company, but I was never going to be pursuing a career in travel because I was a lawyer. But 14 years later, and at Butterfield, and now 14 years later at Gray & Co., my lawyering is very dusty, but I will say it was an incredible learning, and I don't think I would be where I am today without the legal training that I was able to achieve.
You founded Gray & Co. in 2009, which, of course, was the height of the Great Recession. And I'm going to think that your niche clientele is probably fairly recession resistant, but at the same time, that's pretty gutsy, leaving the comfort of Butterfield and Robinson and striking out on your own. What did that feel like at the time?
It felt pretty crazy. I also, while I was at Butterfield, worked with PR and marketing, and at that time, the internet was making that world pretty crazy as well. So it was a choice between 2 crazies. I knew that there were trips for clients that hadn't been crafted and were still sitting out there. And I jumped on a plane and went to South Africa and found a trip. And fast forward, the first Gray & Co. trip was in South Africa. Tom Brokaw was a guest on that trip, and it was surreal.
Yeah.
Both having my own company and driving around remote parts of South Africa looking for biking and hiking, but it was all the more surreal by having the voice of God in the back seat.
No kidding. No kidding.
Tom's an amazing guy.
I mean, I would think, and he's a guy who's probably been everywhere and has a lot of access. I mean, how do you impress God on a trip?
He's the most amazing man and tells the most incredible stories. It was an enormous privilege to be in his company.
By now, you're probably wondering, what does it cost to do a trip like this? Well, Cari says it depends on the destination, the number of people, and the complexity. Biking trips, for example, require more vehicles and staff than a hiking trip. And some destinations, like South Africa, are less expensive than, say, Scandinavia. But as a rule of thumb, Cari says a Gray & Co. custom-designed, fully guided trip starts at least $3,000 a day per person, but includes most everything. Now, that's based on a minimum of 6 to 10 people. Trips for 2 are the ultimate, but they become extremely expensive since the hard costs of the service levels and support, vehicles and guides are amortized over such few people. Being in and around wealth all the time, I was curious about what Cari's answers would be to the money questions I like to ask my guests in each episode. Who is someone you look to as a role model or inspiration in terms of how you see them dealing with their wealth?
I mentioned Herbert Allen, the banker. He's an amazing person. He hosts a high-profile event in Sun Valley every year, bringing together the biggest players in tech and media, and he's been a huge role model in terms of fostering collaborative thinking and creativity, and travel is a people business. And so keeping our network alive, our suppliers, our friends, our connections over the past few years has been a real priority for us. And I look to the likes of him as somebody that's helped us reinforce what's really important at the end of the day.
How would you finish the sentence? To me, money is?
Money is freedom and choice and exclusivity and fun and flexibility and family and friends, and simplicity.
You're married. You have a daughter. What do you want her to know about money?
I want her to know how much good money can do. And she's been to 29 countries and she's 10 years old. And she is now at an age where she's really impacted by social life and the haves and the have-nots. And I want her to be able to make a difference. We just came back from Panama and she fell in love with every dog she met along the way. And so when we got home, her allowance went to the Humane Society in Panama. And that to me was a big achievement. So I hope she can make a difference by all that she's been blessed to see and will continue to see through different lenses. And I hope that money is always a source of inspiration for her.
Well, I don't know about you, but now I have a few more places on my travel list thanks to Cari Gray. And what a way to explore them. If you're thinking about planning the ultimate active vacation, you can find out more at Gray & Co.'s website. That's Gray, Gray, and co.ca. Or you can follow them on Instagram. Thank you, Cari, for being my guest, and thank you for listening. This ends Season 2 of Serious Coin. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe so that you can get notified when Season 3 is out in 2023. Thanks again for listening. Serious Coin podcast is provided for your general interest only, and nothing we discuss should be taken as investment, tax, legal, or other professional advice. Always talk to a licensed professional before you take any financial decisions.